Welcome to the program, The Forum. Today we will be talking on a health disability that affects many people, especially children. It is clubfoot. Well, it is said it is affecting about 174,000 children who are born yearly with this disability. And with me in the program today is Dr. Ndasi Henry, who is a clinical supervisor of the Cameroon Clubfoot Care Project. He is an orthopedic surgeon working with the Cameroon Baptist Convention Health Services. Doctor, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So you are here to talk about this very disturbing health disability that affects children, and children in Cameroon not left out as well. So can you start by telling us what clubfoot is all about?
Clubfoot is a foot deformity, so it affects just the foot. The foot is this part of your leg that you walk on. So clubfoot is a foot deformity with which a child is born, and the foot is twisted inwards. This is a model. A normal child should have the leg flat on the ground like this, but a clubfoot is like this. So you have someone that the inner part of the foot is pointing towards the other side. So the sole of your foot points towards the other foot. And so instead of walking with the sole of your foot, you are walking with the side of your foot. And that is what we call clubfoot.
So what can cause this kind of disability in children?
Interestingly, no one knows what causes clubfoot. Scientifically, we have associations that what we think there are possible things that could be associated with clubfoot or that may have caused clubfoot. Theoretically, they say it occurs in the presence of other deformities, as well as the child could be having a stroke intrauterine. That's when it's still in the mother's womb. So all of these are associations. But what we know is that clubfoot occurs without any cause, and it also occurs in the presence of other deformities like spina bifida, arthrogryposis, like in a syndrome, in the presence of other deformities. But by and large, we cannot pinpoint the exact cause of clubfoot.
Well, Dr. Ndasi Henry, so there is a clear-cut difference between clubfoot and curved legs.
Right. Clubfoot affects just your foot. Your foot is that part from your ankle downwards, distally. But curved legs is at the level of your knees. So you see the knees may be bowed inward or outward. While clubfoot has straight knees, but the foot is twisted. Yeah. So clubfoot and curved legs are completely different entities.
And now the Cameroon Baptist Convention is very, very concerned with this health disability that affects mostly children. Why did they get to this?
The Cameroon Clubfoot Care Project is a component in the socioeconomic empowerment of people with disability program of the Cameroon Baptist Convention. And we are interested in having inclusive management of all disabilities. Patients who are blind, patients who are disabled. Collectively, we think these are correctable problems which we should not allow people become disabled because of them. And so clubfoot is one of those fascinating medical problems which once diagnosed early and treated, the child becomes normal, like any normal child. So you see that someone can be pulled out from disability by just simple measures. And we think that is the reason why we have gotten involved in something like this, because the results are clear. The results are evident. It's a life-changing event. It's a life-changing deformity which a child becomes normal, and you pull someone out of disability through simple correctable measures.
Can you give us some statistics, some figures of how many children? When did you people start exactly, and how many children have you helped correct the legs?
The CBC Health Services, and I'm sure with many other organizations like the Catholic Mission hospitals in Sajoka and Bafut and other institutions, have been treating clubfoot. So it would be wrong to say it's the Cameroon Baptist Convention that started treatment of clubfoot.
Well, not really started, but you people
but
are
as a project, so that we can have adequate statistics in terms of their incidents, management patterns, making sure it is being treated the right way. It was started in 2014 under the name of the Cameroon Clubfoot Care Project. And in the first 2 years of the pilot project, which was aimed at educating people about it, creating awareness, teaching more people how to treat clubfoot, identifying those children, and creating more advocacy. We're able to treat over 250 children over the first 2 years of the pilot program. And that was just in 4 hospitals or 4 clinics that were identified to have the right personnel, have the right motivation, self-motivated to treat it with little subsidy from the program. And so over the last 2 years, which the program has been extended up to 2017, we are hitting close to 500 children who have been completely treated or are in the process of, or are in the treatment phase of the clubfoot deformity.
Here we are talking about treatment. What does it entail to treat a child with clubfoot?
It is very simple. Once a child is born, from the first day of life, and the midwife or even the mother realizes that the foot is not flat. In other words, the child's foot does not look flat like any normal child, where a child lies down and you can see the sole of the foot, and the foot is twisted somewhat.
Yeah,
like
can
this.
our cameras help us see exactly?
Right. So if the foot is twisted somewhat like this, rather than like this, because we expect any normal foot to be something like this. So if you see a child with the foot twisted inwards, then you know the child has clubfoot. And from day 1 of birth, even before the naming ceremony or any occasion you want to do, it is advised that we start treatment, because once treatment is started at this early phase, most of the tendons and everything in the leg is very flexible, and so it can be easily corrected. So what we do is we start using what we call POP, or the plaster cast, and we start treating these children by weekly serial casting. In other words, we start correcting this foot. How do we correct it? Let me step back. If we look at the bony architecture, this is how the foot of a clubfoot child will look like. Instead of being like this, the leg will be twisted inward. And this twist is very important, because that is why we talk about the method of treatment, which is the Ponseti technique. The principle of Ponseti treatment takes into consideration the anatomy of these bones, because there are 4 classic deformities that we'll see in clubfoot. And without an understanding of those classic deformities, it will be impossible to treat clubfoot appropriately. So, if I may just go through the deformities so that it will be easier to understand the treatment, permit me. So, a child with clubfoot has what we call a cavus. A cavus is caused by this big toe. That this big toe, instead of being straight and flat, it is curved. So it's like a dome, like this. So the first deformity is caused by the big toe.
The big toe.
So it is arched. The second deformity is called an abduction. If you look at this leg is trying to pull towards this side. So it is going towards this way. So that is the
Forming a C.
Forming a C. I think you are getting to understand the treatment. So it is forming a C, so the toes are pointing towards the other toe. So we now call that an abduction deformity. You are adding. The third deformity is what we call a varus. The varus is caused by this mid part of the foot. So instead, and the mid part of the foot and coming to the heel. So if you look at this heel, you'll see that it is not straight down. It is like twisting like this, inward. We call that a varus. And lastly, we have the 4th deformity called the equinus. In other words, the heel, the child is making as if he wants to walk on the toe. So the leg now is twisted like this. So if you look at this, on this model, you see that the heel is, you see that varus, and now you also see that equinus. This one is coming up, instead of being like this. Now, in the treatment of clubfoot, therefore, we try to treat the 4 classic deformities, which we've just mentioned: the cavus, the abduction, the varus, and the equinus. And so once the child is born from day 1, the first thing to do is to correct the cavus. So that big toe that was curved at arch, we try to straighten that big toe. By the 2nd week, this would have been corrected, because we put a POP that starts from the toes right up to the thigh. Once we put that first toe gets corrected. By the 2nd or 3rd week, once it's corrected, we now start correcting the abduction. It means these toes that were pointing the other leg, we start shifting it away. And we slowly start doing this. And by the 4th to 5th week, we'll now correct the virus. Once you are doing that, the heel will automatically start correcting itself. So as you are doing this, you'll see that the heel is no longer curved like a C, it's getting straight. And lastly, we now do what we call correction of the equinus by what we call a tenotomy. We just make a small cut here, and the leg now becomes corrected.
So how long can all this take?
5 to 6 weeks.
Wow.
Once we do that in a child who is less than 2 years of age. But we advise to do that in the first week of life.
So immediately a mother notices that the child has a problem with the leg, it's good to signal.
With the foot.
Sorry, with the foot,
Right.
you're right. So now, when it is an adult, how difficult it is to correct?
Just to complete, once that has been done, within the first 5 weeks, we have the foot corrected. We now put the child in what we call a brace. A brace is a special type of shoe that has a bar in between. It helps to hold that leg in abduction. Remember last time we said adduction? Now we abduct that leg and correct that equinus. That child remains in that brace for the first 3 months, day and night. It's a very comfortable shoe. The child doesn't cry. And after 3 months, we now start wearing every evening when the child is going to bed, just like when the child wears the pajamas. And that child wears that for about 3 to 4 years. And it is changed progressively. As the child grows older, with bigger legs, we change the braces. Once this is done, there is 98 to 100% chance of having a normal foot by the time the child is walking. So that is a treatment. Now, for an older person, we still use almost a similar method, because this method I've described is the classic Ponseti technique. The Ponseti technique actually was designed or was proposed for children who are less than 2 years of age. If someone is 20 years of age, we still use some form of a modified Ponseti technique. In other words, we start doing the serial casting. We'll do some stretching exercises, then we place a POP and start correcting sequentially in the same manner.
The same manner.
Like,
and how long can it take?
This will take a bit long, because instead of weekly cast change, we have been doing it every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it may last 3 to 4 months. Now, once we do that, and we don't have a full correction, because in an older person, at times, the muscles may not yield as much, and they may not be as patient. We may now then do some bit of surgery to fully correct that. But for those who are patient, and some legs are a bit different, it is possible to do a complete correction without surgery. But for all those who are older, 12 years and above, we've completed it with some minor form of surgery, and they are able to walk normally.
And doctor, we are in Cameroon, how much can this cost? Because at least parents should understand how much it can cost if it's a child or an adult.
To start with, even anyone who cannot afford can come to any of the clubfoot clinics. You can go, if you don't know the clinics, they are found in any of the CBC Health Services facilities. If it's not being done there, you'll be directed. We also have the Catholic hospitals like Sajoka in Bafut. We have St. John of God in Guti and in Batibo. That can be done. The Presbyterian General Hospital in Kumba, in Manyemen, they are also part of the program. The Frot in Yaoundé, the Hopital District in Deido and Nelon are also part of it. So we are getting to even the regional hospital in Bafoussam. If you go there, you'll be treated. So even a child doesn't have money, and or the parents don't have money, the project tries to subsidize the cost by providing the plaster of Paris, the soft roads, so that everyone should be able to afford. So but for patients who are paying usually about 50,000 francs, should be able to complete the initial treatment for a child who is less than 2 years of age. For older people who require some form of surgery at the end, it may cost about 150 to 200,000 francs as a complete surgical fee and treatment fee.
Okay, doctor, we've heard about treatments. Now, if a child or an adult is not treated, what can be the disadvantages of having this club leg throughout your life, or clubfoot?
Right. If someone is not treated, definitely you become a disabled. You can't run, definitely, because you are walking with the side of your foot. There's
Do you
no
feel
way.
pain?
You feel pain because your foot anatomy, your weight-bearing surfaces, and the biomechanics of your leg are distorted. So definitely you have painful legs. You have sores on your leg because this part of your leg is not as strong as your sole. So you have sore on your leg, you have pain, you can't run. And it's a stigma. When you are walking in, everybody looks at your foot, and you feel socially an outcast. So I'm sure it is a significant self-image problem for those who have clubfoot. And to some people, they can't go to school because some distances to school are far. They can't meet up with schoolwork, and they may be laughing at them at school, so they don't want to go to school. And some of them may not be marriageable, the men or the women, depending on the community. And some are even seen to be witches. And that is something we try to demystify, that
Dangerous.
clubfoot is not witchcraft. Witchcraft has no business, there's nothing like witchcraft causing clubfoot. It is a congenital deformity that no one knows the cause. A child is born with it, and so it is not witchcraft. But you see, people will feel that they have been bewitched, or they accuse the mother, and so that is a serious problem, and which is thing we need to be treating clubfoot.
I want to find out, doctor, one last question. It means some of those people we see limping, they had clubfoot, because I understand it can cause one leg to be shorter than the other. It's not necessarily an accident. It might be clubfoot that has not been treated.
It would be inappropriate for me to say yes. We can't generalize all the foot deformities to be
because I
clubfoot.
said some people.
Right. Yes, some of them, the clubfoot deformity may not cause the leg to be shorter. What clubfoot will do is, clubfoot makes the length of that foot shorter. So if you are size 40, the side that is clubbed may be size 38. The calf of your legs may be a bit smaller, but that will not make you walk with a limp. However, we have some secondary forms of clubfoot-like deformities, where people have some burn contractures, or they may have some paralysis from an injection, and they have some paralysis of some of the muscles of the foot, and they'll have a clubfoot-like foot, and that may resemble clubfoot. But the good thing is those two can be treated surgically. It just depends what are the causes, but what are the different causes. But clubfoot by itself would not really make someone to limp when it's corrected.
Thank you so much, Dr. Henry Ndasi, for talking to us. But before you go, what last advice can you give parents out there?
Our advice is, every mom, every family member in the community, it's important to look at anyone walking with an abnormal looking foot, that it can be corrected regardless of the age. And for mothers who still give birth, always try to have an interest in looking at the structure of your child. Look at the foot. And healthcare workers, once you see a foot that looks abnormal, it may not be exactly clubfoot, but it's not good to hide the child away because you don't want a stigma, but to raise that awareness that clubfoot is present in our communities. It is treatable. Even if you don't have the resources, present yourself, you can be assisted. We can help source funding from various sources to see that clubfoot does not become a disability in our community. It's a treatable condition, and it is easily correctable right from birth. We shouldn't delay to have people having clubfoot. And we should demystify it. It is not source of witchcraft. It is not a mother or father's fault. It is something that just occurs by itself.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it all. Clubfoot can be treated. It's not an issue of witchcraft, and we can give our children a better future. Thanks for watching.